I'm the only sim racer in the world to have got 5k I rating in a month and 100% complete the original Assetto Corsa. This puts me in a uniquely qualified position to let you guys know what the main differences are between iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate. This will help you pick your single simulator that you're allowed to play as a real sim racer, and then allow you to build your entire self-worth and identity around that sim racing product, making it possible for you to argue endlessly on forums as to why your video game is the best. Subscribing to this channel will affect your mental health, and probably not positively, but you need to subscribe so you can then unsubscribe. And if you have free will, don't click the like button. Because my face looks like a boiled egg, the background footage for this video is a race we did the other day in Le Mans Ultimate. So, both simulators have online ranked racing built into them. Both are considered realistic racing simulators, and both would make any sane person regret picking sim racing as a hobby. Now, to get straight to the point, the two biggest differences between these titles is that iRacing is much more active and has a far bigger range of content on it, and Le Mans Ultimate has a really limited range of content but is much more realistic to drive. You also have to keep in mind that iRacing's heritage and original design was solely for Americans to learn how to drive around roundabouts in the wrong direction. But iRacing did evolve and now has a ton of racetrack content that's very active, really good racetrack laser scan models, and loads of different cars: Formula Ford, MX-5s, F4, Super Formula, GT3, LMP2. There's a massive range of content in iRacing, whereas Le Mans Ultimate is limited around the endurance content and the World Endurance Championship with hypercars, LMGT3, LMP2 and GTE content, though they might add more to it in the future, who knows. In terms of tracks as well, Le Mans Ultimate is a lot more limited, with the tracks Bahrain, Circuit de la Sarthe, Kota, Fuji, Imola, Interlagos, Monza, Portimao, Sebring and Spa. A fantastic selection of content nonetheless, but obviously nowhere near the amount of content that iRacing has. So already, if you're someone that wants to drive MX-5s, Formula Fords, light Formula cars, Le Mans Ultimate's really not going to tickle your pickle. Le Mans Ultimate is the ultimate Le Mans experience, whereas iRacing is the ultimate way to get shouted at by teenagers who have stolen their parents' credit card. Because iRacing has voice chat, which on the face of it you'd think would be terrible, and in many ways it is, but actually is incredibly entertaining, allowing me to make lots of remixes of all the Salt and Anger. So it's good. I think all sims should have voice chat in them. Get on it, Le Mans, what are you playing at? Now, I'd be amiss not to mention the fact that though iRacing has loads of content, one thing that iRacing does do particularly well, ironically, is endurance races, and particularly their big events where they have ginormous 24-hour races with you doing driver swaps. There'll be thousands of people around the world taking part in them, all organised by splits, and no other simulator has found a way to manage to create a product that allows a sim racer to convince their partner that they should have an entire weekend to themselves playing their racing games. So iRacing has absolutely nailed that. Maybe in the future LMU will introduce more of those features, that is the plan with it, but right now iRacing's the big daddy of the big sim racing event that's then inevitably ruined by iRacing's atrocious tyre model and netcode. We have to talk about that. So iRacing, though it's got lots of content and though it is considered a very realistic racing simulator, sadly they've never managed to make it so that their tyres behave like actual car tyres when you are driving at the limit. You simply cannot balance cars naturally at the limit in iRacing, so it becomes a very punishing racing game to play, especially for newer drivers, and then it becomes a very weird game to play for more experienced drivers. You really have to adopt a very specific iRacing driving style, whereas in Le Mans Ultimate, it's super approachable, super forgiving. You know, you can overdrive, just counter steer and drive off through the corner. You're really not going to get as many frustrating race-ending moments in Le Mans Ultimate, which some might argue make it boring, but others would probably argue make it basically realistic. So the more interesting part of the driving in Le Mans Ultimate will be not wearing out your tyres and just trying to drive faster, rather than avoiding the insta-death situations or having to push the brake and the accelerator at the same time to catch slides that would in every other simulator be caught by a bit of counter steer. Then, as I say, the netcode, unfortunately in iRacing, though it is really good for smoothing and accommodating really wide pings, and given that you can play iRacing any time of the day against people anywhere in the world, in a sense, some aspects of iRacing's netcode is great that you can do racing with people everywhere, even in quite fast cars. Unfortunately, iRacing's netcode causes cars to ghost contact and explode with very mild content, seemingly randomly, meaning that you really have to give a ridiculous amount of space and also really internalise and learn iRacing's arbitrary physics in order to have fun racing, especially at higher levels. Whereas in Le Mans Ultimate, you can actually drive much more immediately and more naturally, with you able to have a little bit of car contact and it just making a lot more natural sense. You're far less likely to explode from a gentle tap or a little rear ending from another vehicle. Neither are perfect with netcode, don't get me wrong. Cars do stick together a bit in LMU and there are quirks, but it's night and day. It's absolute night and day. And I don't mean in the 24-hour sense. I mean in the difference between the quality of the netcode and how that then produces more realistic driving. Again, LMU, way more realistic driving and racing due to the tire model and the netcode compared to iRacing. Now we have to mention the price of these games because this is a significant factor. Credit to iRacing, they have managed to simulate the cost of real motorsport as best possible by making sure that you have to buy every single part of the game, also have a subscription, and then you lose access to everything if your subscription runs out. Generally speaking, though you can do like a basic subscription and there's base content in iRacing, generally speaking, most people that play iRacing a lot will end up spending between £250 and £350 a year for the first 3 or so years, and then around about 90 to 100 a year after that, because they'll have most of the content and it will be them just renewing their subscription fee. Whereas Le Mans Ultimate has the ability for you to choose between either doing a Race Control Pro yearly subscription for £64, which gets you all DLC, all content in the game, and a bunch of additional online features, so £64 a year for that, stays up to date all the time, or you can do the traditional Steam purchasing thing and buy the original game for £28.99 and then all the DLCs, which I think come up to about £80, £70-80. But basically, you could play Le Mans Ultimate in its full capacity for £64 a year, and you could actually get the bulk of the basic game for £30 to taste and see what it's like. So, however you put it, Le Mans Ultimate is a hell of a lot cheaper than iRacing, which obviously, as I say, massively reduces its simulation value. And unfortunately means you might be in races with poor people. And who wants to be in a race with poor people? The whole point of motorsport is to segregate society in a very non-confrontational and agreeable manner. So really, to help you make your final decision on which simulator you pick as the only simulator you're allowed to play as a real sim racer, I would say it really just depends on the content that you want and whether or not you're a dirty poor person or not. So if you're a poor person and you're happy with just the endurance content, well, obviously Le Mans Ultimate, you'll get a hell of a lot of entertainment out of it. It's going to keep developing and evolving. You could spend an entire lifetime playing it and still not be any good at sim racing. So, you know, infinite entertainment. Whereas if you like MX-5s, Formula cars, and you want to jump between different content, and you really want to do those big, prestigious events that are escape from your partner, and you're not a poor person, then iRacing is probably the one that you should pick. Obviously, myself, I am immune from having to pick a singular sim because I produce glorious online YouTube content, and that's an immunity pass that I can show at the checkpoint, and they go, okay, that's fine. So you could start a YouTube channel, then you can play iRacing, Lemans, Assetto Corsa, you can play everything, and that's okay. So that's an option as well, though it will cause hair loss and it will subject you to some of the most moronic dregs of society imaginable through the comments under the video. On that note, let me know in the comments which you have picked and why you regret your choice. But there you go, guys, yet another absolutely superb video, some of the best editing you've ever seen in the history of cinema. Until the next one, thanks for watching this, happy tea drinking, take care, and goodbye.